Let's start today's class with a little quick activity of converting our percents to ratios and decimals. Remember that a percent is a special kind of ratio that compares a number to 100. We'll take that 5% and write it as 5 over 100. We then say, can we simplify this by dividing by the greatest common factor, which is 5, and I get 1/20th. To write it as a decimal, I could either stop and read it here, it's 5/100ths, or simply drop the symbol and move my decimal over 2 places. And there's my decimal conversion. 75% is 75 out of 100. That's a commonly used percent. It's 3/4. Drop the sign and move your decimal over 2 places. 75/100ths. 42/100ths. When I say 42/100ths, that automatically gives me the hint of what the decimal looks like. I divide by my common factor of 2, and we're good there. 2% is 2 out of 100. Divide by the common factor of 2, and 2/100ths, 10ths, hundredths, and done. 115% is 115 over 100. That leaves me with 1/1500ths. And I could then take that and simplify a little further. And that would be 1/3/20ths. Now to write this as a decimal, it has a whole number and 15/100ths. 0.5%. Then we have to convert that because we have to move this over once. Move this over once. Go ahead, simplify. And we could take that and write that as a decimal by dropping the symbol, move the decimal over 2 places. We also talked about percents, finding percent of a number that's a multiple of 10, and we can use that mental math technique. We are going to explore setting up a proportion as well as setting up an equation, but let's think back to that mental math again. 10% says let's divide and move our decimal over 1 place. It's equal to 7. We know and recognize that 30% is the product of 10% times 3. 10% is 7 times 3, 21. If I wanted to set up a proportion for this first problem, 10% is 10 out of 100. Okay, part to total. What percent of, there's your total, missing the part. Cross multiply and solve. Same thing with the second one. I have 30%, which is 30 out of 100. Equal to some part. We don't know the part, we're looking for the total. And you would cross multiply and you'd get your 30x is equal to your 7,000, and you would again divide. To set up an equation, I take that percent and convert it to a decimal. There was a reason why we were working on that skill. Of means multiply 70 equals x. Okay, so I'm not going to put this time symbol here. I'll just put a dot. I'm going to multiply, and that'll give me my answer. So mental math, when the percent is multiples of 10, set up a proportion, or write an equation. Let's do all three with this problem. Mental math says 20% of 40. Move your decimal over once. 4 times 2 is 8. What if we want to set up a proportion? It would be 20 to 100. We don't know the part. We do know the total. Could you multiply? The answer to that is yes. You're going to do your cross product. You're going to get 100x is equal to 20 times 40, which is 800. And guess what? I've got the same answer. X is equal to 8. Third method, let's say what's 20% of 40? 20% as a decimal, move it over please 2 places. Again, we're moving this over, multiplying. Applications. We're going to look a little bit at some percent applications, and our lessons will take us into discount and markup, some simple interest, maybe a tax or tip problem, and commission. If you want to buy a pair of boots that cost $120 and there's a sale for 20% off all boots, what is your final cost? Because it is a multiple of 10%, I could use mental math. You could use proportions. You can use equations. What would you use? So you've got methods A, B, and C. We could set up this proportion as 20 over 100. 20 is to 100. We know the total cost. We don't know the part. Again, cross multiply. And divide. Percent of a number. So I could be looking for a number, a part, a total, or a percent. In percent problems, if we're writing equation, percent of a number is the percent of the total. So 20% of 60, I can convert that there to an equation. 20% is 2 tenths times 60. I could, if I wanted to, instead of the equation, instead of read it as a proportion, 20 is to 100, as x equals to 60. And then we go into some practice word problems. We will look at what is 25% of 12. 3 methods. One method would be saying, let's take this 25 out of 100 is equal to x over 12, cross multiply. A second method might be setting up an equation. So that's 0.25 times 12. Now, once in a while, we'll see a commonly used percent. 25% is 1/4. 1/4 times 12 gives me 3. I'm sorry, gives me, yes, that's correct. All right, if I did it with my other problems, cross multiplying in an equation, I'll get the same answer. And this became a mental math because this was an easy conversion to 1/4 and easy to calculate, compatible. We'll look at some more discount problems in our next class, including some of them that you're seeing now. Commission will be one of the next things. We'll talk about money earned when you have a job based on commission. So be prepared for some extra word problems so that we can practice together.